All right, guys, welcome to the Space Bro Show, the only show that has more audio and video issues than any other Star Citizen podcast ever created. So, again, welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all your faces. And joining me tonight are my good friends, Mr. Nighthawk Zale, down there on the end. There he is. And Mr. Toy Grubbin is here as well, guys. So, welcome them, and we're going to dive right into it. Hopefully the podcast will hold together. And I hear alerts. You guys are awesome for the alerts. And exploiting the fact I forgot to turn them off.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Did you just lose him? Yeah, he just totally faded away.
Totally faded away. That's always good.
Amazing, disappearing Mitauchi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so this mic's not this mic, so yeah, that's a thing. That's something else. We'll cross that
Gremlins are
bridge.
real.
There you go. I'm telling you, it's those space gremlins.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the resub and the host and whatever else happened, because I totally missed the entire thing. But I heard the alert, so rest assured, I heard the alert. Good lord. All right. No, we did some cleaning tonight because we've had some problems with some Ubisoft stuff, so I cleaned up all the computers, and of course that would just do it. But Mocker Gaming, thank you very much, bud. All right, so. It's been a good week, mostly not necessarily because of all the information we've gotten, but because we know finally 2.6 is actually full blown testing. It's going, so that's good. But we did get some pretty good Q&A from the guys at the town hall. This Toy Grubbin roots through his desk for parts.
Sorry.
Did you find it?
I gotta wrap this cord. It's bugging me.
He's like, I can't help it. Where's it at? It's in my Lego box.
My desk is just full of cords and cords and cords.
I have Tupperware boxes for that because I got so many cables. It's just one of those things. It's one of those
full
things.
boxes in the garage full of this stuff too.
Absolutely. No, but we let's see. We're gonna grab not that. There we go. No, but we had the town hall happen this week. We had ATV. ATV, it was okay. I mean, again, we went with sound engineering stuff, but I do find myself interested, especially in some of the dynamics of that, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then we had our RTV follow-up. So I'm kind of going to work this week differently. We're going to work it backwards because I think the more meaty stuff was at the beginning, right? With Tony Z probably. And then the cool lighter stuff was at the end. I think it was kind of like turned inside out week for us. So we'll just kind of bundle ATV and RTV together. But they basically focused on talking about the sound dynamics again. And we had one of the newer junior engineers that was interviewed by Disco, kind of, because it was kind of reminded me of the old times when they did those personal spotlights.
I was going to say that. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, and it was more interesting than when they interviewed the same lighting guy, like for the entire year 3 times. But I the main aspect of the sound that and you guys tell me what you think. I thought the most interesting aspects of the sound dynamics is how, and I saw this when Twerk was playing, are different outside than inside, right? Because you have the space, awesome. The muffled, like, precursory sound. And then when you go inside, it's like, all the bullets, all the firing, all that stuff has full blown just ambience, and bouncing off objects and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I find it interesting that you're able to diverse that zone, right? It's not like it was before where it may sound different in an airlock or it may sound different than that. It's like you could blast through a window and it go from one sound dynamic to another, just like all in the same matter of seconds. So I thought that was really interesting how they did that. And I really asked a question. I was hoping to get them to answer that. I was like, so how do you explain that? Like, because if you blow out a window, right, it's no longer should have atmosphere in that, at least that room, unless, some shielding comes down or something. But the sounds are different on the inside than outside in that room still. I was like, that's kind of, so I wanted to kind of give them that. They didn't want to answer it, though, because they didn't choose my question. But
Oh, I thought he said that they were going to be working on that, though, so...
Yeah, I'm just curious how they're gonna explain that, because I think, wouldn't it be cool is if the sound changed because the atmosphere changed inside? Like they blow out the window and then it goes to that outside type sound where it's muffled and stuff because you have no atmosphere internally.
I don't see why they can't do that real easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you've seen their screens, how he sets that stuff up, all they need to do is put some kind of little script in there. It says if the atmosphere drops below a certain point, then all gun sounds are muffled type of script,
And I think a week ago we were, it might have been 2 weeks ago, they kind of talked about atmosphere. They did a special on one of the ATVs about the volumetric atmospheres and talked about how zones and how atmosphere could impact different areas of not only a planet but a closed space, like when stuff gets vented and all that stuff. So I'm interested to see, like, almost for lack of a better comparison, something like in Battlefield, right? They have a levolution stuff, which is kind of a canned animation thing, but I mean the environments there are very destructible, so you can change your environment based on the gameplay. So like in Battlefield 1, for example, if artillery hits the ground, it changes the actual terrain because so I can use where a mortar hole was as a foxhole all of a sudden and use it as cover. I'm interested in if you blast out windows and you space people that aren't like fully suited and stuff, not only do the sound dynamics change, they make it to where you no longer maintain gravity in those certain areas. Things like that would be cool. So I'd like to see those things where you can change your environment that way. Now, given that's not till down the road, but still, it would be interesting. So what were your guys' favorite takeaways from ATV, RTV? Like just different elements they talked about. Any specifics? I figure I covered sound because it was so beefy. I mean, there's other things they talked about in ATV, obviously.
Well, aside from the sound, I really enjoyed the sound because that was one of my fields of focus when I went through film school. I was actually really excited by how in depth they went into covering aspects of the rebalance to the flight model and how boost and afterburn has changed as significantly as it seems to be changing. So
but it's not really significantly a change. It's just instead of pressing a button and jumping straight into a cruise, you're building up to go into it. You know what I mean? It's the same mechanics. It's just how you apply them is just a little different. So, and of course the speeds are slower, but.
Okay, I guess I should clarify. When I label something that way, I'm thinking from the perspective that, okay, well, that means that there is a period of time where I have to relearn how to fly my ship. So anytime that happens, that's how I label it.
Makes sense, though. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah, from what I understand, everybody is definitely going to be relearning how to fly ships. So all these new mechanics.
It's not like we haven't had to do it before for people who've been around a while. The dynamics have, and
they'll be doing adjustments well into release anyway. So
Absolutely.
I mean, they still balance WoW. They do balancing on WoW all the time too. And how many years is that in?
Yeah, a lot.
But I think it would be easy for them to be able to do that because they love so much to create the dilemma within the lore of the universe, so that things like technology or culture get pushed forward, and you see the change in the verse, and you have to adapt to it and play that out. So it'll be really interesting to see how they play those dynamics once the whole thing is live.
Absolutely. I think that it's going to be, from all accounts, and from what everybody said on feedback, like from the brief back and forth. I talked to some of the other guys, and from what Twerk said and everybody else, it feels like the dynamics it's actually more engaging and more fun because you have more control than less control. It's not like, because right now, let's be honest, what's cruise used for? Cruise is used to get the fuck away from people. I've never seen anybody like cruise to get into an engagement unless they also used it to like get away from it. So the guys who have burned way out roll over after they get out of cruise, like come back into SEM, roll over, and then cruise back into the fight, and then come out of it. And it's like long range jousting. you know. And I think the main argument against losing crews, people said, is like, what about travel? I'm like, you don't need crews to travel somewhere because you jump to the object. Now, maybe jump ranges will be different. Maybe when you jump in or you quantum drive in, you'll be at a much closer range, you know, and then you'll burn in because they drop you out, like, for use example at Korea. I mean, you're like 14, 20K almost off the station when you jump to it, and then you have to, you know, a lot of people like to try to burn into it. But it's actually not that far. It's actually not that far. Now, there's a command for Goku. It's right there.
I put it in.
Yeah. It's in there. It's got an S on it.
Forgot the S.
Forgot the S.
Don't make notice of who answered that question either. So
there you go. No, but I think that's going to be interesting. And plus to having the, at the current speeds, the other things that I thought about today, like after I thought about it more, was they're talking about things like the Prowler and other boarding ships and stuff linking onto caps and all that stuff. If we had crews and we had all these super high-end speeds, you aren't going to be doing that. People be smashing into ships rather than mounting and boarding them and trying to get on them and do that sort of thing. I mean, I think with dialing back the SEM, it's going to make the whole aspect of capital ships a thing, right? Because if you had ships move at the speeds they do right now, even if you had slower capitals, you'd basically have fighters doing this around capitals and people trying to gun them, and I don't think it would work very well. I think this might kind of reel everything in. And honestly, if it goes wide and it doesn't work, we know that CIG will change it. So I think we just lost Toy for a minute there. He has become the large TG. We'll see if it dials him back in. I thought he was just holding really still for a minute there. But really, he was losing video. So we'll see what happens with that. And they had divided you because he totally dropped off. Let's see. Now it's just one large Nighthawk. It's all good. I'll try to call him back.
It happens.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it does. Welcome to Skype.
Got that.
Well, yeah, now you can divide. You can be like, hey, Nighthawk number 1, what's your answer?
Well, you see, what I was thinking was,
Yeah.
I disagree.
Entirely. Entirely. So we'll see if he calls back. Does that. But no, I think that was really... We divided him, Mocker. That's what we do.
I'm on to East Bank. I'm on to West Bank.
So, Penguin Lord says, anyone else want to ran a Jav bridge just like an A-Wing did in Superstar? Remember, though, and this is the point I always point out for that scene in Star Wars, was the fact that the deflectors were down when he was able to ram the bridge like that. So, because they say about half second before that, he said, oh, deflectors are down. It's like, and then he came right into the bridge and rammed them. So, remember, shields must be down before you ram these things, or else you're going to have a bad day. At least if they go with the Star Wars dynamic. That's the whole thing.
Do. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that'd be fun. You get all kinds of areas. You can just, like, move around.
I'm trying to figure out where my face fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
There you go. There we go. All right, so I can't find I had the notes for the Tony Z stuff with the town hall. I can't find them now.
Oh man, there was a lot of it.
I know, right?
You ask him one question, and it's like asking Chris Roberts a question. Instead of getting the simple answer straight to the point, they're going to give you the entire history of the answer and the development and everything else behind it and
the thought process, whether they were having coffee
years from now. Yeah.
It's I was having coffee. I think it was a Tuesday when we came up with this, but they'll go into the whole deal with it. There comes Toy. See, now you're back in your box.
Hey.
Wow, that sucked.
Well, that's why I didn't reshape anything. I was like, he's going to come back. And I'll reshape this shit, and then it'll be a difference. So you're going to have to just be divided in half, Nighthawk. So we just let him be in two boxes for a while. All right, so I found my notes. Anyway, so And this right here, I was saying this before the show started, is thank God for Captain Serp, because he's been doing like some Reddit-based transcribing and note-taking on this stuff, because I am far too lazy to do it myself. And with the whole INN debacle and all that stuff, that's the one thing I miss the most is the transcripts. So they were nice and there, but Captain Serp's been knocking it out. So what we're talking about now, Toy, was we're back on to the town hall where Tony Z really dove into this. And guys, obviously, if you have questions or anything stemming from that, if you type !questions, it'll take you over to our Discord. Deposit your questions right there, and we'll probably get into questions pretty quickly tonight because there's like not a lot of meat and potatoes there. It's more theory crafting, all that. We're happy to comment or say anything on that. So,
but you know what? Sometimes theory crafting is the most fun.
Yep. Absolutely. That's what I do, and that's usually what some of my other guests complain the most about. They're like, "Oh, there's too much theory crafting." I'm like, "That's the exciting part, the opportunities and imagination of what could happen." So that's good. So, the breakup there where they moved over and did all that stuff. So evening, Rolo. But
Hey,
again,
Rolo, okay.
yeah, everybody's popping in there.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So let's see here. So too long didn't read. Basically, well, we'll just tackle these by bullet point. Non-mission NPCs interaction basically is one of the main subjects he talked about, and that was the very beginning of it. And basically, people had posed questions to Tony regarding the level of interaction and which NPCs would engage in players. So we'd have several states of actors there, basically. You'll have the NPCs that are kind of acknowledge your player existence, much like the guards in an RPG setting would, where if you have a title or you're somebody important or they've interacted with you in most scenes, they would do nothing other in an RPG than say, hi, or, hail my lord if you achieved a certain rank or something. Even the low-level NPCs in this seem to have a level of interaction that surpasses it by several fold, which is pretty crazy. They're basically, they aren't going to interact and maybe lead you into conversations or mission sets or things of that nature. But the interesting thing is Tony said their goal is to still have them remember who you are. So if you had a positive or negative interaction with them, they're going to remember that. And I know from my experiences right now in other RPGs in the past, you could have a bad interaction, right, with an NPC guard. They kill you or something, and then the next day they're like, "Oh, hello, sir." They don't care. But this seems to be like next level stuff. What do you guys think about the NPC interaction and stuff and the tiers of it? What were your thoughts on that?
I think it sounds really cool. I mean, we'll definitely get an earlier glimpse at that when Squadron 42 comes out.
Yeah.
Because, all those NPCs are set up to do that in Squadron 42. So that'll be our first real hands-on with how that system works. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For me, I'm really excited because this is the first time we're going to be able to play through either a linear gaming experience or a sandbox experience and have opportunities to wander the world and just explore it and not necessarily in ways of like, oh, I have to get to this next location and add it to my map. It could be something as simple as I'm in Squadron 42, and instead of immediately going off to my next mission, I'm going to go down to the Chow Hall to see which of the NPCs are down there. And then when I get back from the mission, I'm going to go back down to the Chow Hall just to see which NPCs are down there, because they have their own shifts, they have their own food needs, they have their own rest needs, they have their own reputation, they have life schedules. So it almost makes you want to wander around these locations that you're going to be in and say, what are you doing over there?
Yep.
Well, and that's
It's
the
a
thing
whole
too.
new. Sorry.
Oh, you go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say it's a whole new level of immersion that I have yet to see in any kind of video game.
And with 90% NPCs, the real trick is going to be finding out which ones are actually going to give you the good quests. You know what I mean? So you're going to be spending countless amounts of time talking to NPCs. And then he said, based on some things, if you're bugging the NPC too much, he's not going to want to talk to you, or he may want to, and so it's going to be something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll really add to the ambience of all the different environments too when you have that many reactions and then they retain those memories too, because it's like I was saying, you go even into a GTA setting or something like that, all the NPCs are nonchalant, right? You could have just murdered like a dozen people and had this huge like whole event happen, but when you walk down the street the next time, it's like all the NPCs, oh yeah, now they'll be like, oh, that guy, let's stay away from him, and I remember he was here earlier and he did this. Or if you're a good guy, they'll be like, hey, right on, and actually remember their interaction with you. So I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope they really expand on that with like the bars and in stores where you spend a lot of money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You become the VIP at the at wherever you go to buy your clothing. If you buy lots of clothing from one vendor type of stuff, and I think
I know you
really
say clothing, but I know you're really saying strip club. Because
lack
you're
of
like,
clothing.
Yeah, black card champagne room action. I know what's up. I know what's happening there. So
Well, I mean, depending on the clothing, it's always important to know what it looks like on the floor too.
exactly. Does it pile properly? What kind of stains can you get out of it? All that type of stuff is pretty important on long term. I'm gonna skip this one part because we're gonna come back to it because I do want to talk about that a little more heavily in interdiction. The medical system. They talked pretty in depth about a lot of aspects. They didn't really go deep in the medical system, but a lot of people noted, and the question stemmed from the fact that Tony Z basically was trying to answer a person's question, saying that the person would say, hey, we didn't see medical on the schedule, right? On the overall schedule, they didn't find that there from the Star Citizen CitizenCon. And what it was basically he, in Tony's mind, he incorporates that mechanic, or at least the beginning of that mechanic, into the rescue aspect. Because he said that basically is hand in hand, because rescue facilitates doing any type of medical. That's where it is. Right. So those mechanics are tied in. So they didn't forget about it. And I don't remember which level medical comes in. I don't remember the rescue aspect, whether that was 3.3
that's
or
towards
4.0.
The back half of the 3-point
series. It was something like that. But it was interesting they tied it in there. And I think with the Cutlass rework and all the other aspects, medical is going to be really interesting for like
I don't think it's going to be as big as you guys think it is right now. I think what you're planning, like with the limb replacements and all this other stuff, is going to be way, way later on. I think all he's planning on right now is just basic, like heal yourself with some extra stems, and actually carry your stems around on your belt type of healing. I don't think it's going to be anything.
Yeah, I think
major.
I think the only thing I could see happening, maybe even next year, would be the personal beacons. The rescue, like if you're in a catatonic state, because like that's what I'm assuming, you don't die easy in this. If you get blasted out of ship, you have an option to like probably like take your death and respawn somewhere, or send out a beacon and see if somebody responds to it, and then they could come and try to scoop you up and rescue. And it's probably got a timer and all that crap where it's like, your body the DNA's viable even in deep freeze out in outer space, exposed atmosphere, for like 20 minutes or 15 minutes or something. If somebody comes and scoops you up by then. So that way it's a pressing issue. Because what you don't want is like the lazy ambulance driver that's sitting there drinking his coffee like, I'll get out there eventually. It's like you have 15 minutes to do this mission. And so it gives a sense of urgency to a rescue driver. And that would be a cool little op where you could get paid for too, right? It's like come out there and do that.
And that mechanic's in there now pretty much with those ICC rescue
probe
things.
Yeah.
It's just instead of, going to rescue an NPC, you're actually going to rescue a player. So,
absolutely. And NPCs at that matter, right?
Even in the drop of 2.0, we were already seeing the start of SNR, because you had players whose ships were despawning unexpectedly, and if you're near a Comare, if you're at Covalex, then everybody was using you remember when everybody was using chat and saying, hey, can you pick me up, I lost my ship?
Yep.
Like, that was a very regular thing. It was either you're the taxi service or you're SNR, and you're basically playing Marco Polo around Yella.
I honestly left most servers where they were playing Marco Polo with that, because it's like more the chat was just filled up with like more to the right, no to the left, and then if two people were lost, forget about it, because then the two people trying to find the other two people would like read the wrong chat, and they'd be going more to the, oh, I'm over, but no, that's him. That's not me. I'm like, oh my God. Do we need voice
I used
comms
to
or
love
what?
doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason I loved it is because it felt most like the fulfillment of one of the promises that Star Citizen is going to allow for a level of immersive gameplay between players, and that there are in fact going to be player-driven missions for other players to take on. And this very much felt like that, where
Yeah.
you have one player calling out for aid, and it's up to however many other players it takes to try and complete that recovery process. But all of that aside, focusing back on the question at hand, um, this is like everything else about Star Citizen. They're building one baby step at a time. And if we're going to get to a point where we have Endeavor hopes and we're doing open heart surgery, or we're playing surgeon simulator, or however they're going to be doing the advanced medical stuff, you can't actually get to that point without having people to bring you those patients. But you can't really figure out how to collect those patients and bring those patients back without first knowing how to run cargo and how to collect cargo from a zero G environment. And so there's this whole need to do one function at a time. And a reminder, we've never seen this stuff done before. We don't know what the process is. And so for the first time, we're actually seeing, okay, all right, so if we want to be search and rescue, or if we want to be a surgeon, before they can give us our surgical tools, before they can give us our functioning ambulance, we have to know how to get shit out of space and onto our ship.
Yep.
So let's work out cargo first. Once we got the cargo figured out, well, now we know how it's going to work.
Yep.
Because hey, that transition from the ship local grid to the spatial grid is still a rough one. And that's software that they're trying to figure out, make work. So there are so many steps before we get there.
Yep.
But it's coming.
Yeah, and you don't want to make it overly convoluted either, because if they're trying to rescue and it's like, say a battlefield type rescue thing, and there's ships blowing each other up and all this stuff, and an ambulance comes on the field and you're trying to get stuff. I wonder, because with the whole World War II flight mechanic type aspect in mind and all that, it would be so cool if there's both on ground or in space, if there's like a policy where people don't shoot ambulances. You know what I mean? Like you're in an armed conflict within our org, and it's like there's like guys coming in trying to extract people that are injured and stuff. That would be so interesting to see that type of craziness. Of course, I would probably target all the ambulances so my opponents couldn't come up. But it would still be interesting if that was a dynamic in there that you would see that. Or maybe on an NPC battle, say that's a path you want to choose or explore. Maybe there's mission sets where the NPCs would target each other and not the ambulances. So players could try to come in as a mission and try to rescue people in and out and stuff like that. Because you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff for NPCs too, not just other players. So it'd be interesting.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, most of this stuff will be done with NPCs. So.
Yeah, especially, and I think that's a better way to go anyway when you're trying to learn how to do a skill, because it's all about the player adapting and learning how to perform these tasks. They're not skill point induced. They are, hey, learn the game mechanics behind it induced. So the better you get at it,
It's based on the time you put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just hope it doesn't become like a strap down mechanic. Like they come in, you stabilize the guy in space, you have to put him on a gurney, strap down on gurney, get the gurney inside. I'm like, that's going to be so long to do all that stuff. It's just going to be like, well, I got 20 minutes later. It took me to help to rescue one guy. It'll just be kind of a little too over the top for me.
I went back and watched one of the old Caterpillar videos where they were using the tractor beam.
Yeah.
So if they had something, small tractor beams on this, the rescue cutlass or something that could just grab a body and drag them right over to your ship type of thing, I think that would be good.
Well, I picture ambulance teams, right? Like if you had a 2 or 3 man team, you'd have one guy pilot, one guy run tractor beam, and one guy go out and like mark the guys. Like I got this guy, he puts him on something or flags him, and then you pull him in. I got this guy. He gave me his credit card, whatever. Pull him in, it's like, just like reel him in like that, because it's going to be a lot faster to work in teams doing stuff than it is to try
Absolutely.
and do it any other way. Well, moving on, they also talked about, and this is something that Twerk was very sensitive about on Redacted. I noticed watching their podcast. Talked about the large sprawling cities won't be fully explorable apart from some exceptions due to the quality over quantity philosophy that Tony has. Basically, he wants landing zones to be filled with unique and filled with lots of things rather than vast empty cities that repeat itself, just kind of template itself for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of the same thing.
Right.
And he says it's just not possible with the amount of time it basically takes to bring up to their quality level, right? To make certain cities that vast. Now,
Can you imagine how long it would take to build a Terra full city?
well, I understand, but at the same time, that is what it is. So I'm like, I think what they'll do is they'll still make the overall template of the city, but much like Area 18 is now, you can only get to certain areas in each landing zone. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
That's exactly what they're going to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the big pains with that, and I think the thing that made Twerk very sensitive to it, is the fact that our corp is a complete environment of the entire city like that, and they talked about being an explorer of vast cities. I think the thing lost in connection there, though, is the fact that what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to have the same city blocks and blocks? Because I've played games like this, not full planet cities, mind you, but I've played games where it's like they have 58 shops in there, and it's this massive sprawling space, but it's all the same thing, and it's not, there might be 2 specialty shops, and the rest are commonware shops, and then it seems redundant, and everybody always uses the same 4 shops in the main square of the city, and maybe venture the specialty shop, and that's it. And then there's shops that like nobody ever uses, and that just remain void. And I think that's the thing they're trying to avoid here.
Well, plus, it gives it a sense of realism too. Because think about any vacation you take or business trip you take, when you go out with what time you have available to explore the environment you've chosen as your destination, you're not going to see every inch. You're not going to visit every street. You're not going to go to every part of it. There's not enough time. There's not enough resources, and there's not enough interest. So if they're cutting off certain areas, like who wants to go and visit a refinery? Most people don't.
Yeah.
So that's going to be maybe a background piece on the other side of a fence that we're not actually authorized to cross because we don't have proper permissions or identifications or who knows what. But
they're going to
make it immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're definitely going to do that kind of thing because it's real.
Yeah.
It's what you experience in real life. So to expect more than that is, I think, expecting too much.
I think right now too, that's the thing. They could always expand it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I was going to say. So, initially and I saw some videos on it and stuff, they're going to have it spread out over the city. So you have one area here that's got a few things, and then you could take like a tram. I don't know what kind of transportation thing they're going to have. Then they have another area here that's, big, and you can look around. But later on down the line, once they, get the game released and they're done, with all their major stuff, they can go back and add more sections to the city and open up new areas with new quest lines and stuff like that. As long as the empty planets are, you could pretty much go anywhere on the empty planets and explore. I don't mind them, restricting off huge swaths of these fake cities,
Yeah, I agree with that. Plus, I mean, you think about future expansions, I'd like there to be, not just in space, but it'd be cool to have like arenas, like a Sata Ball arena on a planet or something like that, like a big Coliseum type thing or something of that nature. You can add those things in, the events, different stuff. And, like one planet can still have 10 plus landing zones that are all like 2 to 3 times bigger than Area 18. The amount of trying to cover a complete planet is just like over the top. I imagine they'll have a main area that's the main landing zone for most of the markets and shops in a specific city. That might have a couple precursory on a specific city, maybe a refinery there. But most planets aren't like a city world. They'll have cities on the planet but the rest of the planet is either more open or barren or has small villages or maybe even areas that you could build yourself in the future or living areas for you. So they'll have all those different aspects in there. So I think that's really important to note. So also, guys,
That's
make
what
sure
I'd
you're
like
putting
to
your
see.
questions in the questions threads and stuff too. But
That's what I'd like to see later on down the line too. Is
yeah.
they have so many tall, buildings, skyscrapers type of stuff. It'd be nice later on for people who want to live in the city. If they could put elevators in there and you have your own little room in the city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where you could put your trophies and stuff that you don't want to get blown up with your ship.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be really nice.
Keep your separate families in each different city on different planets, a little more spread out. I mean, that'll work out.
I'll be honest with you.
Pay rent on it. It's a money sink. I mean, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I don't want to feel like some kind of socially estranged flyboy where if I'm not aboard my ship, I just keep my belongings in my hangar. I like the idea of being able to have a quote-unquote home base for the avatar where you can return and you can have personal effects that reflect your character history that don't necessarily have to be in your ship or in your hangar. It could be a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Summer house?
Oasis. That's,
there you go.
That's a little more along the lines of what I'm thinking. It could be your oasis away from the standard Star Citizen experience, and something just, maybe 2 or 3 other people are allowed in. If anyone else is allowed in, it could just be your private space, but that would be really nice.
I'd
I've
like
played
to
games.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I played games in the past. The farthest one back I can think of is called The Realm, and you had basically little zones with your house, and you could bring friends into it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You decorated it all up and stuff. And Star Wars Galaxies were the same way when they put player cities in. You could decorate your guild halls and your homes there, and then you can invite friends in and stuff like that. So I'd definitely love to see that, because I love games that do that.
Yeah, I think they're on track for that sort of stuff. I even want to see, though, like outposts. I want to build for the organization, especially with Overwatch being a mercenary organization. We're going to travel. We're going to be all over. And it'd be nice as you assign people to know, hey, you can go, this is the nearest system or planet where even if I'm not there, you could give them remote access. They could go in and they could arm up. They can get the gear they need. They can get all the different supplies they need and then go to these
little
different
safe
outposts.
houses.
Yeah, little safe houses all over the place. And then maybe officers and stuff can have apartments in them and stuff to kind of maintain that you want people there. Because I imagine the thing that a lot of people haven't even talked about yet, if your ships have maintenance, surely any of your housing or outposts will have some sort of maintenance too. And if you don't have rent or maintenance and all that stuff on them, it wouldn't be a really good money sink. I mean, if they're going to have degradation on ships and equipment, I can only imagine it's not only do you have to pay rent or pay fees to keep that thing there, but you have to maintain it, especially against attacks if it's in some barren area or having some sand people poke at the outside every once in a while.
I think if it's a system that they have in play and it's a system that works and doesn't detract from the overall fun and space-bound experience that Star Citizen offers, it's guaranteed that that's going to be something that continues to stay a standard with whatever they choose to bring into the game after they've established that standard. So I know that they've discussed it before, but they haven't really covered it much. But there has been the talk about housing later down the road.
Yeah.
How much later down the road? Who cares? It's of no importance at this moment in time. It doesn't support Squadron 42. It doesn't support any initial relaunch, any initial launch of the Star Citizen experience, and so can be something that is dropped in our laps in a later patch after release. But everything that they're building now, as I've said before, is something that will directly support the addition of that later on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge reason why I think a lot of the stuff on the back end takes a long time to develop, because they're really trying not to bottleneck themselves, right? They're trying to make sure they have these open paths for beyond where they're developing right now, where they can continue to expand and do these things. And I think that's a lessons learned by CIG, because like different elements with them, like subbing out different aspects and whatnot. Thank you for the sub, by the way, or the resub.
Hey.
There you go. Yay! I found my skip button though, but we still love your face. I'm just not gonna listen to 30 seconds of music for it. But yeah, no, I really think that having those elements there and making sure they aren't bottlenecked, much like when they first tried to make Star Marine, they subbed it out to a different company, or if, when they were creating the engine and they were working with CryEngine, they bottlenecked. Now they're trying to make it sure it's open pipes, so they can go in any development direction they want to and not lock themselves in. So I think it's a smart move, and it shows them using restraint with these cities to not go ham on it and say, oh, no, don't worry, we're going to make a complete city and go anywhere, and you get lost for days and never see everything, and it'd be insane. And I'm like, that's a little too much. It's a little too much. So thank you for reeling it in, CIG, and then leaving yourself the opportunity to expand later.
Yep.
All right, let's tackle one of the most controversial things that they've talked about previously, and that was the scanning, right? Scanning was very controversial with like a lot of people, because short-range scanning came into big question. And I think with Tony's explanation on long-range scanning and some of the more complex scanning setups, it kind of eased a lot of people's minds. So I think this town hall, if you didn't get to see it yet, guys, you should watch that, because a lot of people were freaking out about the golf swing, as it's been labeled, the golf swing incident of 2016, which I inherently don't think is a bad mechanic, personally. It's worked for games for like 2 fucking decades that want to have a kind of skill-based mechanic that's not like over the top. But I think the problem is people looked at it, and we're pretty critical when it comes to our favorite game of Star Citizen. But people looked at it.
Give it a chance.
They didn't. Nobody could even play it. It was a concept. It was on a video. Like, hey, we're gonna do something like, oh well, fuck that shit. They just went ape shit on it. And I'm like, guys, it's not even in the game yet. And they were talking about short range. Like, hey, I'm already piloting a Hornet. I'm in a dogfight. There's like all this shit going on. What do you want to do? He's like, oh, hang on, guys, don't shoot me. I'm gonna go tune the sensors and flip some switch. It's not like that. This is a hot, off-the-cuff type scan that you can do as a scout, something like that, and that's all the golf swing was ever meant to do. Now,
well,
go ahead.
Well, sorry.
Jump in.
You go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Toy.
Oh, I was just going to talk, about the difference between passive and active scanning.
Yeah.
Passive scanning is something, each ship is going to have a range, basically, depending on, what components you got in your ship. So anything that comes within that little range will be, passive scan. You might not even know what it is. It's just, there's a blip on your radar here. And then that basically says, okay, something's near, let's check it out. So then you focus on it, and you have to have some kind of other mechanic there for your active scan, where you look at it, you press a button and do the golf swing or whatever they decide to do later on. And
this is something that EVE Online does. Now, and this is for people who play EVE Online and you've ever scanned, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They have a very, very simple mechanic that's called a directional scanner. And usually only the old school guys really know how to use this well. The newer school guys, they don't have to do it because the probing and stuff's like been dumbed down pretty easy now and all that. But the directional scan has a slider, and it's what angle of scan you want to do. Whether you want to do a finite like 5-degree angle or 1 degree, just right straight ahead pinpoint, or if you want to do a 360 blanket all the way around your vessel. It's a very weak scan, and you can hit it once, and it just tells you if anything's around you. 360 degrees up to a certain range. And then you can start to point your ship and narrow it down if you want to use that to narrow down the direction of where something is. Because you can be anywhere in the void of space, not just at an option. Lived in where... Yeah, I know. I was one of the first people in a wormhole. I know. I know all about that. But no, so we use directional scans for that. And then in addition to that, there's a much more complicated thing where you could actually drop probes. And the probes, you did actual triangulation. It was 3-dimensional triangulation. You had to drop typically anywhere from like 3 to 5 probes. And then you could actually triangulate the position in 3-dimensional space by making the probes wide and then narrowing them down, right? And then as you narrowed them down, you'd find the object, and it would become more and more until you had 100% signal. And once you had the probes properly blanketed around it and not crossing over each other, once you had 100%, you could warp to the object. And that's the way
they got to be
probing
doing
does
that exact mechanic for Star Citizen. With
It
the
would be
Carrack,
perfect.
The Carrack comes with probes, right?
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I think it would be perfect. You know, it's like it conquers both sides, right? And the golf swing to me is going to be simpler than directional scanning. It'll get you at least more intelligence on what's there, because the farther away and the weaker the scan you have in Eve, it'll just tell you what type of ship it is. It won't tell you the ship, but if you have a better sensor suite, or if you're closer to the object or whatever, it'll give you the actual type of ship it is. You know,
You're not going to want something that's so hard to use, because somebody's going to be coming at you, and you're going to want to get a fairly decent scan before that guy gets within firing range of you. So you're not going to want something that's going to take you 10 minutes to scan him to see who he is and if he's friendly or not. You just need something to kind of point in his direction. You see him coming towards you. Let's give him a quick scan. Is he friend or foe? Boom.
Yep. And just like Kamikaze said, now the directional scan has only a 14 AU limit. So you could only go up to 14 light years, and in a system, that's fairly small. I mean, you'd be able to scan around a certain area, but if he was on the other side of planets or anything like that, you wouldn't hit him. So it had to be line of sight. It had to be in the area, but he would be off grid. He would be outside the viewable aspect of range. You wouldn't be able to see it, but you could see it on a directional scanner, and that would give you a direction where you can drop probes at. People that were really good at dropping probes in scouting, and I was one of those guys. And there we would go out and we'd be able to find safed up super caps inside Eve, and we would drop entire fleets on top of these caps, and we'd kill them. And they're like, basically, if it was a mothership, it's like a $3,000 ship at the time. You would just drop ships on it and blow up this guy's that's worth $3,000 USD. So scanning was very important at the time, especially after the deep safe stuff. Because deep safe stuff, well, they really, there was one point in time where you could like burn up to like nowhere in some void of space in Eve, and then they reeled everything and said, nope, everything's going to be right here. So all these guys were AFK and left these super caps that never log off, much like what's supposed to happen to Star Citizen at some point. They never log off. It reeled them in to like this area, and when they logged on, they found out billions of ISK worth of ships were all dead. But it's a very interesting mechanic, and I like that. The golf swing thing is something if you're on a Hornet, or if you're on foot, or if you're on something like that and you're just trying to give a precursory scan, that's all it's for. That's all you can do. And the only other mechanic I can think of outside of that would be doing the terrible thing, like Tony said, of hitting a button and just knowing what's around you, and that's lame.
So,
like an impulse. Go ahead.
An interesting perspective on this, because while I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily like the idea of the golf swing as a mechanic to use, for me, it's because it's one of those modern day video game tropes that we're a little too familiar with now. And so I don't know if it's an expectation or it's a hope or it's just my own concept of what matches up, but I don't feel like this particular mechanic as a gaming trope works with the immersive design and styling of Star Citizen. However, I am 100% behind the inclusion of it, because this, like every other component, is going to have more than one manufacturer. And if you don't like the way this manufacturer's system works, then try a different brand.
Or become a scanner.
Yeah.
Get a better ship. Become a scanner and use real scanning systems. I mean,
Right.
That's the thing. I think if you're a dogfighter and you're in a smaller ship, this is what this mechanic's tailored for. It's not like you're going to have Tiger Woods sitting on your dashboard, guys, with a little golf club going, woo! They're going to make it look cool anyway. It's CIG. They can make anything look cool. But, and the only other object is like what Zealous says there. It's like how we ID people in BF1. What do? We just sit there and fucking spam Q, and we just like mark people like, oh, there's a guy, and we're just hitting Q the entire time. So unless you want it to be like that on everything, come on, give me a break. Try the golf swing. Let's see if it's crap or not first. But
Right.
It's staying in. So people are like, rip this, rip that. It is, Disco tweeted out, it is in the game. It is going to be in the build when it comes out. That is going to be part of scanning. So everybody who hates it just going to have to get over it. And blah, blah, blah. And at least try it. But I look at it like it's just like there was, if you want to go golf swing, Mafia 3 had the golf swing in it too. Like it was, you'd sit there and crack a door, you'd have to roll it over to where you wanted it at, and then you'd say, oh, this is a sweet spot. You'd hit the button, and then it'd bounce like this, and you had to hit it again to like unlock the door. A very simple mechanic for that, and they just want to make it something that's difficult for a pilot who's actually actively trying to do something else to do, but not too hard.
Well, they're going to have to do the same thing with hacking too. I mean, they're going to have to add some kind of mechanic. You just don't walk up to a computer and
it's like, I'm a hacker, and they don't want you to have to like, okay, you have to learn these 62 lines of code and figure that out.
I'm sure they'll have some kind of similar game mechanic that's, you know,
yep,
hacking too.
Yep. I'm really, I see people talking about the long range. Now, long range is totally different. I am in favor of an actual probing system or a recon system you have to dial in, something that actually involves maybe triangulation, those type of things, because those are the things that allow you to get exact fixes on stuff. And then you already have what people don't think about is like, okay, what's the counter gameplay to that? Well, the counter gameplay to probing system is if you have a directional system, you'll see on your screen, you're like, oh, there's probes around me. You know, and you know somebody's looking for you when they're dropping probes or they're trying to put stuff in the area. So those type of things allow counteract gameplay. So if somebody comes up with a better mechanic than the golf swing, let us know for directional scan. But I don't see a better mechanic for long range scan than probing. But that's just my thing. But we haven't heard anything about probes in a long time. We haven't heard anything really about drones, even though we know there's drone bays in some of these ships, supposedly. So, and we don't know if they're going to call both those things the same thing or if they're going to be totally separate types of entities.
They're two totally different things.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be.
No. They are. They're two completely different things.
Yeah. In definition, they are. Hopefully CIG
doesn't. No, in Star
them
Citizen, they are as well.
Well,
there are systems on ships that drop probes, and probes is just a piece of equipment that transmits and scans.
But mag boots were also a thing in Star Citizen, and they just said nah.
Absolutely. So at this stage, everything is based on concept and theory craft because of what they want it to be. Yeah. But where we are right now with the game that we have in our hands, there is not a single ship that offers probes or drones. And so there's no need to go and explore those mechanics yet. Plus, I think that if they succeed and they make a tractor beam system that works really well at what it's supposed to do, they will be a step closer to being able to do drones, because some of those drones are going to be remote use.
Yeah.
And I loved what I saw in that tractor beam.
Yeah.
Cat.
Yeah.
That looks really cool.
Yeah, the tractor beam does look cool. I don't care so much about drones because drones almost broke Eve. In the very beginning of the beta, they let almost everybody have drones, and you could attach drones. You could mod out and have a different drone. And so you had ships that wouldn't even fight. They would just have 12, 16 drones, and they would all be like their own little carriers. And you just see more drones on the screen. And it actually brought down the servers because there were so many assets they had to track, hundreds of them, that the players couldn't come into the system because there was all these drones, and they were the ones tracking and fighting. So they dialed that back, made it more a carrier-based mechanic. They still had drones, but you were minimized. Some ships could, some ships couldn't. And I think CIG's approach on that is fine. The reason I will respectively disagree with the fact that I think probing needs to be thought about earlier is because it needs to be thought about the same time that they have beaconing systems and squad warps. Because if you want to be able to detect something to get rescue, I want there also to be a way for me to probe out and find a wreck that's not detectable, or find a person who doesn't want to be detected, who's hiding up here around a planet with his big ship waiting for his victim to come through. So if I'm a bounty hunter and I know he's around this zone, I'm going to drop probes around, and I want to start to dial in where this guy's at, because he's probably going to go low emission. He'll probably try to shut down systems and fly dark. You know what I mean? So those type of gameplay, that hunt and seek, I think is really fun. And that's where you want your skilled player to come in, who's this guy's like, hey, he knows his shit. He's good at triangulation with this stuff, and you could spend a whole day mapping out a system looking for people that you know are safed up in there somewhere. And I think that's really going to be something really important to look at in the short term. And we will. One of the people were asking. They said, "Aren't they working on a squad warp?" The quantum linking thing that they brought up. That's essentially like a squad warp. Kind of. I mean, it's linking everybody together. I don't know why they would. Quantum linking makes it sound so complicated that, hey, I just wanted to be able to jump with my friends. But
I'm not sure I like that. Though.
I don't. And I think
if you start off late, you shouldn't just be able to instantly catch up.
That's what I'm saying. I think it should be synchronization of systems, though, is what they're talking about.
I was understanding it as something that was sort of like if the three of us are in a wing together, then whoever the wing leader is going to establish the jump coordinates, the destination point, and then the two wingmen are going to slave their nav computers to the wing leader's computer to secure those coordinates, and then everyone's going to jump at the same time. But all the computers are doing is saying, okay, well, number one is going to coordinates X, Y, and Z. So what we're going to do is wingman number one is going to go X minus 1, Y minus 1, Z minus 1, and wingman 2 is going to go X plus 1, Y plus 1, Z plus 1, and make sure that we're all jumping into the same area of space, but not that we're jumping onto each other, which is sort of what's going on right now if we're all trying to jump from Olisar to another location at the same time.
But what I hope with interdiction is, say ship 1, 2, or 3 got yanked out of the travel, the other ships and whoever's behind, say you have a couple ships that are late, taken off or whatever, will end up coming out, fairly near where the other one was pulled out of warp because they're all grouped together.
I hope they
talk about that.
They did a little bit, but I hope they really, really think about this. And I do not want them to be able. You should not be able to select what ship you pull out of warp or quantum. I don't think you should.
That's why I said it should be
it should be an AOE
you're basically
thing.
Hitting an EMP in an area, and if you're lucky, you knock one out.
That's what I'm saying. I think it should be, if they're going to do an AOE, it should blanket an area, and if you quantum through that zone, it just automatically pulls you out. And if you're trying to interdict a bad guy, or if you're a bad guy trying to pull down a good guy, you don't know if you're going to get your target or if you're going to get a battleship in your face. It's like whatever's coming through there, that's what's going to get pulled out.
It kind of makes me think of the in Firefly, when that chick pretends to be Mal's wife and then steals the ship and points it towards that gateway thing that's supposed to power it down and kill everyone on board. It makes me think of one of those. Just set up a little gateway and hope that someone goes jumping through it.
I'm thinking much like Eve, you have a generator and then it's a field that comes around it, and then you can turn that up or dial it back down. Instead of like Eve's static, you choose a size of warp field generator disruptor you want, and it'll be either 10K, 20K, whatever, but I want to see it dialed down. So Dom, you're just going to get purged for that comment. So I don't think that should be the end of interdiction. I think they should also make it to where, much like we talked about, you could point an object. Just like in EVE Online, you should be able to put a mounted module on a ship, point it at an object, and as long as I maintain distance to it, because this would go right into their afterburn mechanic and stuff, right? If I point it at a ship and we're both running, as long as I can maintain my distance on them, I can keep them there. But the big ships are going to start pulling away. So it's going to break that connection. They'll be able to get away eventually if you can't fend them off. But I can keep you from jumping early as long as I'm at that distance. But the difference is I have to maintain that distance to the object. So if I have to worry about maintaining my lock on them and people are shooting back at me and stuff, I might decide to break off so I don't take some bullets to the face. But I think interdiction should have multiple aspects, not just an AOE field generator. But we'll see what they come up with. But I hope there's more mechanics for interdiction like what they have in EVE Online, because the EVE Online ones are really fun.
We got to give them a chance. I mean, you
I
don't
know.
just see something on an ATV or you hear about it
Yeah.
on our TV and then immediately shoot it down. You know.
Well, and that's why I always say I'll try everything. I want to try all their different
Absolutely.
game mechanics, because if you don't try them, you don't have a good feedback for them. Because you can just say, "Oh, make it like Eve." Well, then we could get some shit that's exactly like Eve, and be like, "Well, you could have made it cooler."
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, but there's some good basis there. I think that you could pull off of and get some information and stuff. That's always
Plus,
good.
a lot of people forget that you're not only buying a video game, but you're buying into a development experience.
Mm-hmm.
And by immediately shooting something down before it ever has an opportunity to hit the table, denies you the opportunity to see one of their ideas, because their ideas are ultimately the ones that are building this game, not ours. And if we don't give them the freedom that they promised us to work under, then what did we invest in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, and besides the fact that, and I've met a lot of CIG guys and stuff. These guys want. These guys are into this game. It's not like a job to them where they just, yeah, I'm collecting my paycheck and doing what they tell me to do. These guys are working overtime all the time on the weekends. They want this thing to be awesome. So,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes stuff doesn't work and they need to redo it. Like this initial speeds. They boosted up the speeds, it didn't work. So now they need to backtrack a little bit, slow down the speeds or adjusting the mechanics a little bit. So, they figure out what works and what doesn't work in the end, but you got to give them a chance.
Absolutely.
Well, I
Yeah.
like also that they aren't just totally kneeling to everything we say too. You got to have some rigidity in your own concept and your own ideas, and then allow your community to be an influencer. And they know when we talk out our ass and we just straight up go, "Oh, that's fucking terrible." Well, then you haven't even tested it, bro. So whatever. So shut the fuck up. We'll get it to you eventually. I mean, and that's kind of what they do.
Yeah, that's what killed Star Wars Galaxies. Is a bunch of crybaby Care Bears in the forums,
I
cried and
want to
cried
be
and
a
cried.
Jedi too.
Yeah, so the developers just ended up in a perpetual rewriting the entire game, and it got to a point where Lucas just says, "I'm pulling my license with you guys. You guys are dumb." So,
Yeah.
and it killed the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad that they put their foot down on some stuff and say, "No, we're doing it this way,
Yeah.
like it or not." So,
Absolutely.
Exactly. All right, so we are entering the Q&A phase of this conversation. So, guys, if you haven't done it already and you have questions about any subjects that we've talked about, please, 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 please type !questions in chat and drop some questions into the Discord. That's where we'll be pulling all of our questions from tonight. We aren't going to take them in chat. They're only going to be there, and that's what we're going to do. Also, if we don't have at least 30 minutes of question, you'll probably have to listen to the smooth, monotone sounds of Mitauchi as I hum out tunes for the remainder of the show. So please spare us all and ask questions inside there, because we don't want to listen to that. So, additionally, let's go around. Toy, we know what you'll be doing. You'll be pretending to help out the show this week. So,
as always,
As always.
I'll do my once a week. Put a link in and be done. So.
yeah, and every time I get the bar even, you'll be yelling at everybody to make it odd, just to annoy the shit out of me. I get it. And then Nighthawk, what do you got going on, bud?
So Sunday I do my hobby Sundays,
Okay.
and we're switching tabletop games. We just finished up a couple of weekends with Infinity the Game, and we're transitioning into War Machine by Privateer Press. So
Nice.
I'll be talking about the game. I'll be painting some of the figures and just kind of hanging out. Usually the conversation ends up being Star Citizen. It's pretty fun. But yeah, it's very chill. Come and check it out. The rest of the week, actually this week coming up, I'm most likely not going to be streaming. If I do, it'll be earlier in the day than you're used to. I've got some stuff going on.
Okay. Well, make sure that you guys are not only following Nighthawk's channel, but also make sure that you are following his Twitter as well. And then I'm sure you can stay up with what's going on and when he's coming on streaming and all that good stuff. So because like me, sometimes the schedules shift and real life has to happen. So we have all kinds of junk going on. So make sure you're also giving him a follow in addition to this channel in order to qualify for this great giveaway that we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be giving away a Dragonfly to one lucky viewer, but you do have to be a follower of both mine and Nighthawk's channels. We don't care if you follow Toy, so don't worry about that shit. But it's going to be awesome.
I know people don't necessarily hype the tiny craft. I mean, the Dragonfly, everybody, I think, at least everyone I talk to, is hyped for the Dragonfly, but you should be hyped for ships like the Dragonfly, the 85X, even the Snubs, because those are going to be ways for us to explore the larger universe when 3.0 drops.
Yep.
Like, start thinking.
You're not going to want to walk around the planet. I know it sounds cool, but you're not going to want to walk around that stuff.
No, but do it on a speeder bike.
Absolutely. Do it on a speeder bike.
I'm just hoping, and I was talking with Cato about this yesterday, that, they have the P52, the 72, and then they got that new X85. I'm hoping that they you could change out docking collars. So say you got an Andromeda or something, and you want an X85 instead of a P52. I hope that, you got to go buy it, but you can still put that, pretty much any snub fighter will fit under the Andromeda. That would be nice. Or the 72,
Yeah.
Hopefully we see that as an option.
It would be nice if they modified the ship for that, where the snubs are interchangeable.
That X85, I love that ship. That ship looks so nice. And it's two-seater.
And it does quantum.
So when you're out there with your... with your friends, instead of jumping in your little one-seater 72 or 52, you got a little two-seater X85 to go down the planet on. So
yeah.
And I want to take the second, because we're on the subject, to reiterate once again, there's a major difference between a snub and a shuttle. A snub, the examples being the 52 and the 72, have no sensor systems of their own and are slaved to the mothership to have that sensory data. Secondly, do not have quantum, do not have jump capabilities, period. The 85X is a perfect example of a shuttle because it has quantum with no jump, and it has its own sensor suite. So it can function separate from the mothership. It can actually be used for away missions, if you want to go into Star Trek terminology. But it's important to understand that different functions. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. No, but yeah, definitely. I don't know that they'll adapt it so all the ships can fit to the Andromeda. It'd be cool if you could and make it that way, but especially with the 85X's body frame being a lot different. But I think it's going to be...
It doesn't look that different, though. I mean,
it's
it
a little
looks
wider.
Similar to the other
It's a lot wider.
It's a lot wider how it nestles in.
I'm not sure.
But if they have, just a different docking collar, because all these parts are going to be modular anyway. So
maybe they'll make that. You could buy a modified docking collar or something, and then you could do that. That'd be cool. So, be interesting.
I mean, for all we know, this could be something that you could get as an aftermarket item, because they did talk. What was it today in RTV about having later down the road about aftermarket style options for your ships, so you can change out components, like parts of the hull or components actually on board the ship, that have nothing to do with the original manufacturer. So you could potentially do something like that. You could take the original Andromeda and maybe remove, I don't know, the umbilical section for the 52 or the 72, or you can change out the cargo hold for a different cargo hold that, rather than accommodating cargo, actually accommodates another ship. So, who knows what the options are going to be later down the road, but that would be really cool.
Absolutely. All right, let's guys, again, if you haven't entered yet, go ahead and put ! Dragonfly in chat, and that's how you get into that beautiful raffle. We get about 25 minutes there, and we're going to call it a wrap for the night on this. So make sure you're doing that and getting in there. We are giving our usual bonus to our VIPs, and under our new metrics, you if you are a base level subscriber, you have 5 times luck, and if you are additionally a Game With subscriber, you'll have 10 times luck. But you also, even if you're a sub on my channel, have to follow Nighthawk. Doesn't matter if you haven't followed Nighthawk too. Too bad for you. So, follow instructions. All right, so our first question tonight comes from Kamikaze Demut. He says, how do you feel about capital ships? How do you feel about capital ships? We'll have the fastest afterburn speed, and the smaller ships like Fighter will have the quantum jump ahead to catch them. So, Nighthawk, what's your impressions? What do you feel? We talked a little bit about this earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it really just kind of feeds into the physics, the immersion, the built-in feeling that we're already used to.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. Why wouldn't it work that way? I accept it without question.
Well, you got, these humongous ships are going to have humongous fuel tanks. Of course, they're going to have more, fuel to afterburn longer, and
they have more mass
good.
too.
Yeah, and that's why it takes them a lot longer to get up to that speed, which is great because it gives the little ships enough time to beat on it a little bit and do whatever they're going to do. But if if you got a big enough ship and it's got big enough shields and you got enough time, you can get away, and it should be that way.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big aspect because I saw some people to counter argument and read to it. But I think one thing people have to remember is we're not launching these from atmosphere, right? We're not launching them from atmosphere. We are actually launching them they're moving in space. So the mass comes into play as far as momentum, and that's why it takes longer for it to get up to speed. But much like we don't use a rocket this big to go into space, we have to use one a proportional larger size with a bunch of fuel. The larger engine should move faster with the same amount of resistance over time and all that stuff. So it's explained out well, and I think it works well, and it allows the large ships a chance to try to defend off of these smaller vessels while they try to break away and get into speed if they're in trouble. So I like it. I think it's a good mechanic. And even if you quantum drive ahead, doesn't mean that guy afterburning won't try to change that direction a little bit if he can. He won't be able to move a lot, much like in cruise speed, but he'll be able to move at least some to kind of deviate if he needed to. So,
plus, we're still in alpha state. What they do right now does not reflect upon the final product.
Mm-hmm.
If this is how they want to explore something that they're trying to achieve as a final product, go for it. That's what the alpha state's for.
Yep.
I'm happy to test it. A lot of smart guys thinking this stuff out. So
yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say, for me, half the adventure is being able to test out these failed states of gameplay, because 5 years from now, I'm going to be looking back on this going, man, you remember when they were trying to do scanning this way?
Yeah. That was so garbage, man. But at least then we have an acceptable review. I think, everybody's opinion's valid, but I think we can't really quantify our argument until we try the way they implement it. Because there's no way to really know until you actually get in there, and then you can kind of see and feel and touch how it's going to be. And I think that's pretty important. All right, let's see here. I think I over-scrolled up.
Lots of questions rolling in.
Yeah, that's good. Just keep them coming. I never delete the old ones, so I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Where's that one?
Echo 81, that's not entirely true. So, okay, let me back up a second. So Echo 81 is saying they can travel at a higher speed more safely because they aren't really worried about G-forces. I can guarantee you pretty much won't be able to turn when you're afterburning like that, at least for the most part. That's not 100% true, because they showed in yesterday's ATV and a little bit today in RTV that even when you're full burn, active burn, you can still get some turn in any direction out of your ship, because at max afterburn, you're basically at the equivalent to what we know right now in 2.5 as max cruise velocities. So
yeah, you'll get a little bit.
In a capital ship, it's going to feel like you're getting nothing, but you have to remember what we know of ships right now. we're thinking about them like we think about our own vehicles. If I make a turn, it's going to be like this because I need to make the turn on this corner. When you're thinking capital ships, you have to think of the larger like ocean-based tankers, where if they want to make a turn and they go 1 or 2 degrees off to starboard, that's going to give them a very wide turn. But if they're going 7 to 8 degrees off of starboard, that's going to give them a very tight turn, and it's going to be flown in a very different way from the ships that we're used to right now. So you're definitely going to get the turn, but the turn is going to be over a much larger expanse of space versus these little ships, which are just going to flip on their tail compared to the cat.
Yeah, where they could veritably, a small ship could just decouple and roll over the larger ships.
Right.
Boy, if they did
Absolutely
that,
do
that'd
that.
be, even if they could, that'd be so dangerous. Because, they're, I imagine they're going to have hella momentum to stop. And it's like, if you imagine taking like a Bengal carrier and you're like burning and then you like go like this and all of a sudden you're like
I
a
was going to
door.
say, I want to see someone use a Bengal to pull a crazy Ivan.
Oh, that would be nuts. That would be crazy.
Can
I'm
you
sure
imagine all
somebody
the ships
will.
on the flight deck just sliding from one side to the other.
If we ever get them in alpha, I'll try it. It'd be cool.
Right.
It'd be cool to try. But
Oh, man.
all right, so our next question. Next question is from JJ2078. He says, on the subject of insurance, do you know if insurance will be calculated using in real life time or in game time? And is there any info on what rate of time will be in game compared to in real life? This is actually a really good question. We've addressed this a few times, and I don't think it's changed. I know I saw Xylo in chat, so I'm sure he'll correct us if we've changed it all, because he's just that type of guy. He'll help us out. But from my understanding originally, all the thing is based on playtime. So per hour on playtime. So if a ship has 3 months insurance, it'll have over 2,000 hours of playtime insurance. Now, this doesn't mean you will have to play in that ship. It just means as far as your time in the game, because time does pass in the game. If you're sitting there playing and you're in your Hornet, your insurance on all your other vessels also, whether you're using them or not, is ticking down. So, but if you have something like 4-year insurance from the anniversary sale, that's over 35,000 hours of game time insurance. So that's a lot of insurance. So I think you're okay on that. So yeah, but it won't travel like real time if you don't play. From my understanding, if you don't play the game for 3 months, then it won't tick down. But if your ships are actively in play, and that's the thing we wanted to get clarification on. Say Toy's using my ship, right? Because insurance stays with the ship, and I'm not playing. From my thought process, the insurance would still tick down because it's in play. It's not me logged off it not being used. They might have to rethink all that, but it's just one of those things, because most of my ships are going to be used by the org. But
Likewise.
yeah, but I think that's one of the things, and that's my understanding. It's all based around that time. When that time turns on and off, we're not 100% on as far as when you loan them out. But if you're an individual player, the answer I received back when via Twitter from Ben Lesnick was the fact that it's based on play hours in game. And that's how it works. So unless they change that.
I like to assume in terms of concerns of this nature that everything is based on in-game terms, because it is an in-game function. And until they come out and officially state otherwise, that's just sort of how I choose to perceive
But
it.
one of the metrics, and this is a question also posed to me a couple weeks ago, was the fact that, like, okay, say take arena commander rentals, right, for ships and whatnot with rec. Those rentals tick down based on day per usage. So if I log on for 5 minutes or 15 hours in one day, I burn 1 day of rental time out of that. So, but yet they're going to use a separate timed thing for insurance where it was per play hour. So if you played 5 minutes or 59 minutes, you burned a game play hour off your insurance time. What's not substantiated, because what's not possible for us to do yet, is the whole Toy uses my ship or I use his ship. How does that impact it? And it wouldn't matter if I was the one insured. because that's not how it works in Star Citizen. The insurance travels with the ship. So it's not like in a vehicle where I'm insured and fully covered. The ship is physically insured. So that's where it all gives this whole big question mark on that. And I think that's a big strategy of why a lot of people freak out and want LTI, because that's the only way they think they're blanketed covered, because it's like, well, I know insurance is on the ship no matter what. They're not gonna hose us on the insurance question. There's a lot of areas that you could spend money on that's a lot more than the insurance. So I think we'll be okay. Be okay.
And they state so many times and reiterate and reiterate the insurance in whatever form, ship insurance, life insurance, whatever insurance they invent that you can experience in this game is going to be minute in the scale of the overall economy of the game and what you have to experience with that economy. So it's not a bad idea to keep that in the back of your mind, but that's where it should stay. You don't need to really have it in the forefront of your mind, worrying and trying to plan out the logistics of being ready for the insurance.
If Zim was right on what he just said there, that would just like...
He's so full of crap.
I know, that would just explode. Like everybody, it's like...
He's just trying to troll.
I know. We're going to have mod meeting after this. Swords are going to be lost. All right, let's see. So that should knock all that. All right, Dom asks, he says, are we feeling lucky enough that the Saber shields are going to be fixed / nerfed with 2.6? Any balance rumors ever heard of regarding the shields of the Saber?
I have not heard.
I have not heard. I know they have openly said it's a bug. The current state of the Saber shields, they should not regenerate to that aspect. I don't know if the size of the shields are actually off. I think it's just a regeneration aspect is like what the problem is with the shields. But yeah, I don't know. In 2.6.
They're going over they said they're going over all the ships again, so I can't imagine.
They specified the flight speed and the weaponry, though. I would think they'd look at the modules, but who knows? I guess if we wake up and the ships instantly explode, we know they fixed it right.
At this state, I'm a little more approaching it with the mindset of, well, so far they haven't said anything about the items system, or they haven't said anything about a specific item within the system, like power plants or shield generators. So if I don't hear them talking about it, I just assume that they're not working on those balances or rebalances. That, or else it's something that's minute enough that...
I just find it interesting that everybody cries about the Saber, but nobody says shit about the Super Hornet, even though they're relatively close in cost. Because
forget the Super Hornet. It's about the Wildfire now.
Well, the Wildfires also is based off not the Super Hornet hull, though. And that's the thing that is throwing people off. This Wildfire is based off the regular Hornet hull. So it's not going to have the balls that the Super Hornet does. Everybody's like, oh, I'll just get this one because it looks bad. They're going to buy that because it's relatively about the same price as the Super Hornet, and they're going to be really disappointed about the fact it doesn't like have the defensive capabilities of a Super Hornet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, different stats.
Yeah.
Super Hornet's still the king, so.
Yeah. Super Hornet's king, and once you take out the Saber out of the mix, then the Super Hornet's even more of a king. It'll be a demigod sitting by itself alone, where it's like, I'm not engaged in that. So it's like, I don't engage Super Hornets with my Gladius at all, because I'm not that kind of dogfighter, and there's no way I got anything that'll even hurt it. It was like, oh yeah, just bolts bouncing off of my Gladius. Won't do anything. And the Saber has, with me as a pilot, I'm a pretty decent pilot, but I'm not a good dogfighter. I can't kill a Super Hornet that easily with a Saber at all. It can't kill me either because of the shields. Now they'll just be able to kill me, so I won't engage them again. So Super Hornet will become the solid meta, and that's it. So, all right. What's the next one? So yeah, I guess something's probably being worked on. Ace Spades wants to know when we can duke it out. Well, I try not to fight viewers, so that probably won't happen. We try to avoid that, legal proceedings and all. So we'll move on.
I think at this point anyways, I'm sorry, I'm going to intervene real quick. I, right now, it's all hands on deck to get Star Marine working 100% polished before Christmas. They really want to get this out for Christmas for everybody. So, I, yeah, they're doing Arena Commander stuff to make Arena Commander fun, but Star Marine is definitely the big focus right now.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but we know for a fact Arena Commander's going to need dozens more passes before launch, because you're going to be, every time you add more ships, especially when we move up to a different ship class, right? We haven't added in the medium-sized ships. Eventually, they want to be able to implement like caps and stuff, and then almost like a combined arms type gameplay. You're welcome, Trillion, for the name drop. Combined arms. Combined arms. Watch for that coming out. But yeah, the combined arms gameplay stuff. So they're going to change a lot of dynamics that we're going to see in Arena Commander altogether, because they want to see like a big scale war where you can have foot soldiers and ships and capture the Idris and all that stuff eventually, and things will just continue to get modified, because in those current fields you're not going to be flying like an Idris through some of that stuff. It's going to be like a mess. So you're going to need a little bit bigger map for that. I'm going to ruin his name. I think it's Durgi Itori. Says, regarding balancing, since you also come from the EVE perspective, in what way would you think CIG is planning PvP? I hear of a lot of, an Arena Commander, and that won't be the vast majority of player fights. I mainly ask with regards to the hierarchy of ships. Do we want to flat out X ship is better than Y ship? Is Z better than that? Or is all of them? Or is it niches? I'd say if you want to draw parallels from my perspective with EVE Online, ships have application. They have usage. They have specialization. And then we have general boats. So one of the dynamics that's different for this than EVE is the general use ships that fit multiple roles really well. EVE has a lot more role-based ships that are like, you use a battleship for a battleship type task, but maybe the type of battleship is more based on your fleet dynamic, right? Because as an FC, it's like if I need an optimal range of engagement or I'm doing alpha strikes in EVE, I want all the ships to match out. They need to be a hit 50K, and they all need to be able to do 3 volleys, and we're going to load this type of ammo, and we're going to jump in 3, 2, 1. This is a lot more dynamic to where you have specialized ships that'll fit certain roles, but you also have ships like Constellations and the Cutlasses and the Caterpillars that could be, you could see the same frame ship, but it could be fit up a million different ways, but not just in module based. They have different things they could apply and fit them out differently as far as the full structure of the ship. So I don't think anything's inherently better than another, except it's better for a certain job, if that makes sense.
You know, that's why they have different classes. I mean, you're not going to be taking your little Aurora and running out, 3 systems away with it to fight in a big battle. Mm-hmm. That's not what the Aurora is for. Aurora is for, the system you're in type of thing. You get to the medium fighters, they can go a little farther type of stuff, and then you get the heavy ones like the Vanguards and stuff. Those are your long-range fighters and stuff. Those are the guys that can go, long ways to get in the big fights and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well, and
I mean, and there will be little ships there too. Don't get me wrong, because of course, the big capital ships will have hangars and stuff, and some of these other ships, the Endeavor has a small hangar that holds a couple ships, and Polaris has a small hangar type stuff. But for the most part,
and Archie's saying
that's why they have the classes.
Archie's saying, and we have pilot skill here much higher than possible than 8. That's not, I won't necessarily agree with that, because it's a different type of skill base. And if you're an interceptor pilot inside EVE Online, you have to be able to corkscrew. And you try to corkscrew flight with a click-based mechanic. It's not easy to do and maintain on a target, because they have a lot of things, like they calculate in transversal and all these other different dynamics in EVE to make sure whether guns will hit you or not, right? In Star Citizen, if you aim right and you lead your target, you have a target reticle, you'll hit your ship, right? You lead there. they're doing math calculations in Eve to determine probability of hits. So it's a huge math equation on what you perform as a pilot, knowing what your signature radius is to determine, like, even if they fire at you, whether or not the probability of hitting inside Eve is way different. Where this is true FPS aspect, where they don't even have hitboxes on characters inside Star Citizen. They are truly mapped to the frame of people and the ships. So it's not a probability hit, it is a definite, do you have the skill to hit it or not? Whereas it takes more preparation in my mind in EVE Online, as well as fleet and teamwork skills based on the fleet in order to do those type of fleets there. In Star Citizen, as an individual pilot, it's all about your preparation modules for your ship, preparedness for the op, and how you perform as an individual inside that. Now, fleet dynamics in Star Citizen, I have a lot of theories on it. We've never been able to do them because they're not in. Right now, we don't even have the full crew sets inside here because it's going to be more convoluted in Star Citizen than even that dynamic, because you have your bridge crew, you're going to have your entire engineering section. It's going to be like running the Enterprise, making your ship together, and if you're an FC or an admiral, making sure all your other captains are performing well and their XOs making sure their crews are going. It's a huge cluster of stuff going on. So many dynamics.
All I want to say in answer to this question pertaining to Star Citizen is never trust a ship by its hull. You never know who the crew is.
Yep. Yeah, that's one thing in EVE at a glance. We can usually determine by the ship class what its capabilities are. That's not necessarily true in Star Citizen. So there's a lot of dynamics there. Now, I'm sure scanning will come into play.
Wait, hold on, because there are certain ships within Star Citizen that are specifically designed to fit only certain types of roles. And then there are other ships that are more generalized. And then there are others that are class focused and yet still gray zone enough that you can put some level of customization to them. But regardless of what in-game hardware you're choosing to use, in Star Citizen, it's about the player at the controls and what they're capable of doing. It's about the player-controlled team behind the ship and what they're capable of doing as a united team that is going to determine what the ship you're looking at is actually capable of doing. So you can't judge a ship by its hardware. Not in Star Citizen.
In EVE, we judge by the organization, right? If you see PL jump in the system, you know their capabilities and what they have because they have a rep. But if they jump in with a type of ship, you're like, oh, that's a smart bombing fleet. They're coming in this way. You don't necessarily know that in Star Citizen. You'll have to judge people not only by their org, but maybe by their crew. You know, like it's almost like you've seen in Firefly, or for those who watch Dark Matter or anything like that, it's like, oh, that's the Raza. Oh shit, it's not just a normal crew on there. It might be so and those guys are badass, you know. But it's not like you can't bring your buddy along who's just got all level 5 everything and he's going to be able to, you know, pull his weight. In Fleet Dynamics, we would shove people with high level skills in the ships regardless of who they were. These guys will have to prove their mettle on the field no matter what, because it's about their actual player ability to run the systems and the posts that they're on the ship in order to do it. So there's so many more dynamics. I'm going to say it's just going to be as good as EVE dynamically, only way more complicated and thus even more glorious when it works out, and even more fail when it fucks up, because it's going to go that way. When a fuck up happens, like if this guy in engineering fell asleep at his fucking comm, we're really fucked because we won't have anybody repairing the ship, you know? So there's so many pieces and parts inside Star Citizen that will have to work to make a crew truly successful, that it'll be just like if your Sino guy and Eve didn't light the Sino off right, he could kill a whole fleet. One guy fucking up in one ship at a key station could destroy the entire element of surprise or get your ship blown up or boarded. And so many dynamics happening at once. It's just going to be crazy. It's going to be really fun.
I really hope that it just doesn't turn into a big space fight with everybody. I mean, because when you go out there, when you start fighting with other people and you get your wanted status or whatever they're going to do with that and stuff, you know, you can't go to like all these UEE planets or systems anymore because you're going to immediately be hunted by either the NPCs or other people and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that's not the main aspect of the game is just a big PvP
I think
battleground.
you're gonna get like Eve. You're gonna
I
have
don't think
zones
so.
where that's what's gonna happen. If you go to these systems, you know it's a hotbed. You're gonna go other areas and it's very passive. People are pretty chill. You'll get the random
Yeah.
asshole, but he'll get blown up instantly by NPCs and everybody else. But you know, you're gonna be able to chill in mine. You're gonna be able to look over and see Nighthawk over there with his crew doing something. And you'll be like, hey, you know, what's up? You know, and say shout outs and stuff. Or you might get a call 3 jumps over and like now it's time to throw down, you know, but that area is going to be relegated. Not necessarily nothing safe. I don't want anything to be safe, but it's just going to be impractical for people to come over there and just be the dick because they're going to lose a lot of shit, a lot of rep, and they're not going to get back over there. So,
Well, and that's what I'm hoping too. You know, if I'm out mining or something, somebody comes over and starts griefing me or something, I can get on the comms and call this. You know, not just friends in the system, but other people that are in the system.
Or even
They're not gonna wanna
NPCs.
tolerate. Yeah, they're not going to want to tolerate some guy coming in
Yeah.
and causing problems. So everybody converges on him and kicks his ass out.
I think if you put a distress beacon up in a UE area, you're going to have an NPC response. It's going to be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And people are going to find out quickly. It's not going to be like, "Hey, I'll just troll them and get out of here." It's going to be you're in some shit. Especially if it's comlink enabled where you have like comm system tracking what's happening there. It's going to be bad.
Well, I think that we're looking at this from a very now centric state of mind where what we know is combat. On the ground, in the air, that's basically the only mechanic in the game. But
Yeah.
we don't have that future sight to say, oh man, it's so much fun as the scanning officer on some exploration
Yeah, we don't
vessel. We don't know what that's like.
No.
We don't know
We
what
hope.
it's like to. We absolutely do hope, but there are so many aspects to the game that have not come in yet that have nothing whatsoever to do with combat, and we don't know how the game is going to drive that. And just going off of the community and the general interests that the community conveys, there is so much interest in exploration or non-combat professions in general that I don't really think it's going to be too much of a concern. Like you guys are saying, there are going to be designated areas for PvP action, heavy action, and they're already building that in, not only in the game that you can play with locations like Korea and Grim Hex and even Kovalex, but they're building it into the lore with the star map. You can go and look up different areas right now. You can read about them and immediately know whether or not that's a safe zone, as it were, whether or not you're going to jump into a potential combat situation. So it's there, and they're going to provide it. But generally speaking, on the average player-to-player interaction, I don't think everything is going to be combat-based.
Yeah.
They're really going to find a way of making it
I
so
think
that
the
you
danger,
have a lot to lose.
Yeah, the danger will be there, but most people, and maybe in the beginning it'll be kind of crazy, right? While people get their way in their stuff, and as long as it's alpha, this is the part I'm scared about. I don't mind the dangerous doggy dog stuff. I was in EVE a long time and it was fun. People could kill you in the safest zone possible if they wanted to, but they took the risk doing it. You know, it'd have to be worth money. Like if you're hauling like 1 million credits worth of shit in your ship that you shouldn't be, and it's thin skinned, and those guys know they could take a really cheap ship and blow you up and take all your stuff in a safe zone, and they'll take the criminal hit. It's worth it. You had $1 million unprotected in your ship. They'll do it. But if you come in there and it's like, well, this is going to take like 10, 20 guys to take this guy out. They're in a safe zone. Do those 10, 20 guys want to take a criminal hit? All these aspects. That's game balance to me. You make it a deterrent enough to where, unless you're being a moron, right? And I was stupid in the beginning. I held huge amounts of stuff and hauled around a freighter, and I got my ship blown up and lost a bunch of shit. It happens. But you learn, hey, and people go to the devs and they'll cry, oh my God, I lost my stuff. Well, I hope doesn't happen. My biggest fear is that we go into alpha and we're doing these type of things in these type of green zones and stuff like that, and people are suicide ganking and they're blowing people up, and everybody's like, oh, we got to change the whole game. We got to change those dynamics. Because the thing people always forget about, especially devs and everybody else, is in alpha it doesn't matter. So guys will be more trolly than they ever will be when it counts, because it doesn't matter.
That's a good point.
So we have to be careful. Now, once it's persistent and it's like, oh, well, this shit ain't getting reset in a build. This shit, you might have to work 4 weeks to try to recover, or you might never be able to recover the criminality of what you do. That will be the true test of how people react to that. So we have to be careful about it, because you're getting trolled right now in Crusader. Grow the fuck up. Who cares? Go in their server. Play with their friend. Because it's going to happen. It doesn't matter if I die 100 times in right now in the game. So it can't reflect what it's going to be later. I think it's going to be more like Eve. It's going to be hotbed zones out where it's going to be. If you do something dumb and you're carrying like the whole farm on you and you have no protection and you're just doing it down a main traffic path where everybody can scan your ship and see what you got, you're probably going to get ganked. Don't do that. You know? So I think it's going to be one of those things there where you just have to create balance, you know? You have to create some balance and stuff. But everybody shouldn't be knee-jerk reactive to everything, because I don't want it to be Care Bear. I want it to be where if you want to be an explorer and you want to stay in a safe system and find wormholes and find little tidbits of stuff to make money, great. But if you want to go out to the dangerous area and take the risk where you could die to pirates or other players and you find something great, you get the payoff for it. It should be a risk-reward. Big time.
And I'm sure that there will be. I mean, everything that they've built for us so far has shown a very, very focused mind on balance, rebalance, cause, effect, and a certain sense of realism, with fun gameplay always at the forefront of every one of those thoughts. So they're definitely going to figure it out. It's just going to take a bit of time.
It's got to have risk. I mean, it really does. And we already have, we're going to have permadeath, which you're going to lose rep. And I hope the rep is a significant enough hit to where it influences people not to want to die, but also recoverable to where if I did something dumb and I lost some rep for doing it, if I take a week out or 20, 40 hours of gameplay, I could recover it. But it's not like if I just got pissed at Nighthawk and ganked him in a green zone, I can come right back in 5 minutes and do it again. I should have to recover that rep, and it takes me out of the game, from being in that zone for a while. It should kick you, but it shouldn't take you out of the game.
I feel like that should be one of those Guardians of the Galaxy moments when really populated planet, and they don't even get to finish the fight because they're all arrested.
Oh, okay. We lost audio for a half second, but you came back in at the tail end of that. So,
okay, Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep. All arrested on the planet, so they did before it all went down. But yeah, I think that was a Skype one though, because that wasn't my stuff. All right, let's move on because I think I went off the rails on that question for a while there. Yes, so that was a ship question in the beginning, I believe. We went to a whole zone of all other stuff. Do you think we'll be able to trade out weapon modules for non-combat modules on ships, aka trade weapon for spotlight tracker?
Absolutely.
Some things, yeah. Some things, no.
Some ships.
Some ships have a utility module slot where some of that will come into play.
They're still trying to figure out how they're going to do hard points. I think right now it's a weapons hard point versus a utility hard point. And most of the utility hard points, I think, are internal. The things like the coolers and the power plants and the engines, maneuvering thrusters, so on and so forth. They have not decided yet. The last time I heard them talking about this, they have not decided yet whether or not, specifically something like this, you'll be able to remove, say, like was originally planned on the 300 series, the 315 and the 325A, perfect example. 315 has a tractor beam mounted under the nose. 325A has the APAR's mass driver. 325A has a weapons mount on there. 315P has the utility mount on there. Can't cross right now.
Yeah.
They haven't decided whether or not you'll be able to do it later, but right now, don't think about it. It's not happening.
Yeah. And the main factor is, too, because they have variants of ships that have utility and then some variants and body styles that don't have utility, there's going to be certain ships they don't want to cross over because basically you can make ship A more like ship B, and then what's the point of having both? and that's the thing. Some of the
Right.
things are going to be role-based, some things will be adaptive, so it just kind of depends on the specific case.
Right. And Sortitus is actually Sortitus. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry if I totally botched
See,
that.
I'd just call him
Very
Sorty.
good
I'd
point.
crap out and be Sorty.
Sortie? Sure. They said that things have different pipes, so you can't mount a scanner on a gun mount because it doesn't have the appropriate data feed
That's
lining.
correct. Yeah.
So they do. Yes, that's a very good point. They do take that kind of stuff into account, which
Yeah.
goes back into what I was saying about a weapons mount versus a
Mhm.
utility mount. So
And
very
that's a
good point.
great thing, and because like in Eve, they compare weapon size can only fit on a certain hard point, but you can put any weapon as long as it doesn't surpass the CPU usage or energy. Whereas in Star Citizen, they actually, if you peeled back the skin, they have actual piping and energy levels where these things feed each other. So if you had something improperly mounted, or if you even could, it wouldn't function correctly because it's like wiring your house. You can't plug in, your dryer into like a wall outlet in your bathroom because you'd blow the circuit out. It's like a whole different ball game. All right. We'll go do at least a couple more here in Discord, and then we'll get to the raffle because I know people are waiting on that.
What?
Yeah, they're waiting.
Why would you wait on a raffle?
I don't know. It must
The
look-
raffle?
The riffle raffle. We learned, he said, this is from Thrace. He said, the more we learn about mechanics and missions, NPCs, how does the landscape of the verse look to be shaping up in terms of hostility, crime, and punishment? We will be living a space life of a worry until proven friendly player interactions, or will we be able to PvP/PvE flag ourselves to guide the type of experience we had with content? We kind of addressed a little bit of this, but not really the flagging system. That is to say, do you think will be properly prohibitive for a player to murder other players within the confines of well-secured systems so that Wild Wild West gameplay to not live? We kind of addressed this. They aren't going to do a flagging system. You're not going to flag up for PvP or not. It's going to be based on where you're at. And I don't think they're, like we said, you're never going to be 100% safe. If they want to kill you, they could probably kill you anywhere. But the repercussions for them doing that are going to scale greatly. If they try to kill you in a green zone, unless they would one-shot you or get you perfect, they will instantly die to everything else, automated weapons, NPCs, everything else, and take a huge security hit for the case.
Well,
Perfect
besides
example.
the fact that, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, no,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like I should. Okay. Perfect example of this would be someone who decides to join a crew and then double cross halfway through the mission to
Yep.
steal the goods. Okay. If that person double crosses the rest of the crew and gets away, regardless of whether or not there's any murder involved, every single one of those crewmen that was double crossed by that individual is going to give that individual a bad review, and their reputation is
Yep.
going to drop. And those reviews are permanently attached to the reputation, and that person's going to be known as a traitorous crew member or a pirate, or however people
Mhm.
decide to label him, or however they decide to categorize it once the game allows for that sort of thing. But there is a sort of flagging system that's going to be in place. You're going to be able to give each other reviews, and directly affects your reputation, and your reputation directly affects everything you're capable of doing within the verse, everyone you're capable of interacting with, everywhere you're allowed to go, so on and so forth. So it will have some significant repercussions.
Which I'm not a fan of that review system in game because I know it can be manipulated. Although
Absolutely.
my organization is going to do a similar aspect out of game, but that's under the watchful eyes of myself and other admins. So we can substantiate that. We, that way it does a handshake sort of thing. But
Well,
like,
and I
it's
was
very
gonna-
important
go ahead,
at
Toy.
that level to do after action reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was just going to iterate that for as big as this game's going to be, it's still going to be a tight community, and word gets out that somebody screwed you over is going to get around to everybody. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if there's somebody known in the verse, it's like it's whatever. So we'll see how it plays out, because one of the things that's a driving factor in Eve is because there's skill trees and it's time-based skills. At least it used to be. Now they've kind of nerfed it to where you have accelerators and all this stuff. But because it was time-based skills, you didn't want to lose your character, right? Because you built this character for 5 years. It took to get to the level where you are. It was time. So if that character gets a bad rep, it's not like you can just throw them away and get another one, because it took you 5 years to make that character. In Star Citizen, the big question mark for me is, if you get so much negative rep, say you are a troll, because there is no skill tree. I could literally do some really bad shit, and I can't read that because of chroma key. But
It said I'm talking about you, Hendane.
there you go. And because in the without a skill tree, I could literally sign up for a crew, screw them all over, and buy another account if I'm that type of troll. But I'd have to pay the $35. So I mean, there is that aspect that people have to consider as well. So
Well, I mean, the price is probably going to go up by the time
it probably
it gets
will
released, too. So,
but then
that's
it comes
another
in the
thing to
fact that
consider.
your character slots come into play. Does character slots tie to each other? Is there some way to identify if I lose rep on one character,
Well,
the other one
Okay,
isn't
so here's
impacted?
the other
all those
thing it
type of
also
things.
brings up. They have talked about on a few occasions, not recently, but in the past, about the ability to get to a point where you can retire your character
'Cause they
into
age.
the verse. Right. And so at what point do you end up retiring your character and take over that account with your next of kin or whoever it is that
Right
that
before I
is
rob you
in your
blind.
will?
Well, and if they're running real time, pretty much, I mean, I can't imagine he's going to retire anytime soon. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We'll see.
I mean,
they've
their
already
star
said-
years are going to be running parallel to regular years. So,
Well, I feel like they've already clarified that the in-game time will not run parallel to real-world time.
Yeah, it's not now.
okay.
Your
Yeah.
time on your insurance would, but your actual time as far as lifespan will not.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how fast it goes.
yeah, I don't think they've decided
Are we
that.
living at dog years in the game, you know?
It could be.
Maybe.
Could be. I mean, you're going to live much longer anyway because it's the future, so it could be dog years. You could still live for a long
that-
effing time that
That
way.
depends on how careful you are, because you've only got, what is it, like 9 lives, 21 lives, some
I don't
number
know.
like
They were
that.
saying 5.
So-
They've said everything from 5 to
There's-
6 to 20 to, it's been tossed all over the place for lives. So
The way I see it, there are only so many limbs you can replace
Yeah.
before it's too late.
And plus, if you're about to retire and you hosed over somebody, right, like that, like I was suggesting, that reputation would still carry on to your next character to a certain degree, right?
Would it?
It's,
Because because the way that they were talking about retiring characters into the verse,
Mhm.
they were saying that you would actually be able to go back later on and visit that character as a living NPC.
yeah, but
within
I
the
still
verse.
think it'd be like the air system because if you die, part of your rep goes to your next character, right? It
Right,
doesn't matter if they're
right,
a
but
friend
it's
or
not-
whatever.
it's not the full reputation. It's not
No.
like you get everything that person owned plus all the hatred that came along with the person.
Well, no, you only get
that,
part.
That person is dead because you carry that person's name or because you carry the title of the ship that person once
Yeah.
owned. Yes, people are going to have a
I think it'll
the-
still influence that because if you retired in the next, because you're assumably the next person get all your shit, right? If you retire your main character, you aren't like saying, "Oh, I'll just give all my shit. He's retired. He's going to the rest home, whatever." You'd still get all this stuff. I think you'll still get partial rep, just like if you died.
Yeah.
So you'll get partial rep because it's like, oh, my grandpa is up at Sunny Shades up there on planet whatever, right? But I'm his grandson. I got his stuff, so you'll still get like a quarter of that rep or something. So you'll get the benefits and some of the minuses, but you'll have to build it back up so you don't lose that aspect. So I think it'll be similar to death. It'll just be like, hey, I made it through to where I want to retire this guy to, rep this namesake because otherwise he's gonna croak. But you'll still keep some stuff, but it's just like you've lived that long, you're gonna take a little nerf hit anyway. Because you've moved on to a new character body.
Mhm.
All right. Let's pick one last question. If there is any. We'll do the... Yeah, I think we'll do the Archie question. It says, seeing the Tavern, do you think we will be able to, one day, past launch, play as other species other than human, like the Bamboozled, Vandal, or something that we don't know of yet? Maybe.
Hope so.
Maybe. I think that would be a hell of an expansion. With the amount of detail they put into one race here, and then precursory races to interact, I think they would go to that much detail to make you be embedded in that, so you'd have to open a whole new section of universe and within their zones. like, you know, beyond our known space and stuff to really substantiate that. So we'd have to see. But I think if it's really sought after and we throw enough money at it, I think they'd do it.
They have talked about it in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that they are interested in looking into down the road, but it will not be a feature that they involve a lot of resources into researching, let alone developing until after release. But that is something that they have talked about
I think
before.
they're even thinking after it would be post the trilogy of Squadron stuff, because it's
Squadron?
because
Possibly.
it's like they have so many resources in that it'd take a full branch of development like that, because they'd have to have story tie-in and all sorts
Right.
of stuff. But yeah, I think it's possible, but not plausible. Even like a year or two after release, it's going to be those things that would be a feature, because there's so many paths they can go with what they have now. Even at launch, if everything they wanted to do was done, they can still. I could see expansions that would just go, I mean, crazy. We could open up new sections of space. There's all sorts of stuff. There's even in the lore, there's more things that happen way down the road from where we're at currently setting. There's so much stuff. I mean, it's crazy. So we're not even close there. Possible, anything's possible in this universe, I say.
Totally.
All right. So with that, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. But let's go ahead and get this raffle drawn for you guys out there and do all that. Remember, once again, you have to be a follower of both Nighthawk and myself in order to do that. And if you haven't followed him yet, make sure we get that linked up in chat again. It's under ! Space Bros, or it's under !Hawk. So we have both those. So Space Bros has them linked there for the cast, and then ! Hawk is also available as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go into the beautiful raffle screen here real quick. Hopefully this works. Maybe. Not so much, right? Not so much. Damn it. We'll make it work. Just have to give me a second.
Thank you for those follows, everyone.
All right, we'll just put it in the middle. Why not for right now? All right, so we are going to draw this thing down. We're going to go ahead and close it. If you haven't entered, this is your last few seconds. I was drawing it out to let you bait in, so it's closed now. So if you didn't do it yet, too late.
I love you, man.
Didn't do it yet. So thank you for your continued support. I skip your alert totally out of love and for the essence of the show. So here's how we do this thing, guys. Basically what we do is we're going to have a keyword popped up down here. If you are a subscriber and you're already following Nighthawk as well, you won't have any issue. You'll automatically get your stuff. All good. But if you're only a follower of my channel, you will have to use the claim word that we populate on the screen here in one moment. Thank you for the follows. And if you use this claim word, you have to be the person whose name's pulled. Please do not use the claim word if you are not the name drawn, for you will be purged from the channel. You will not have the opportunity to win additional giveaways. We give away on my channel, on average, I totaled it up, of $50 to $300 in prizes per week. It's crazy, but we're going to have to look at that again and maybe reel it back the other way. But $50 to $300 in prizes per week here on my channel. And we make this happen. You can always influence that by getting a little extra luck by becoming a subscriber. But we always have open raffles for everybody. And during the Space Bros shows, we always include our fellow cast members because they're awesome. So let's go ahead and we'll put this up here for you real quick. We got a claim word popping up right about now. As soon as I'm done typing it in the right box. All right. So again, don't say this word in chat. It'll pop up right down here. Or you will be purged. So that is your claim word for this evening's stream. We'll leave it up there a few more seconds so it propagates and all that jazz. You haven't missed it because it hasn't popped up yet. They always say miss it like before they even get it. Like, I missed it. Where's it at? Again, subs will automatically win if they get it, but everyone else, you have to use this word in response. So please don't say it, and also don't say the name of the winner. All right, here we go. Get ready to draw in 3, 2, 1. And it looks like the current winner is Baron von Kalten. Let's make sure he's following Mr. Nighthawk as well. I'm pretty sure he is. Because usually they give themselves up right away and they go, oh shit. If they forget to follow somebody.
No, he's following.
Okay, good. Sweet.
Yay.
Congratulations to
Cheers for
Baron.
bots.
Awesome sauce. So congrats on that, and we will be sending you your message for your Dragonfly win here in a little while. So, guys, I think that's all we got for this episode, and I think we're gonna probably call it a night tonight. So thank you again for watching. Thank you again, Nighthawk, for being here, and Toy also for jumping in. Hopefully.
Always a pleasure.
Hopefully Mr. Moonshiners is having a great night. He had to go for a bar citizen over there and take the night off, but we will see him back next week, as well as I will be on his podcast, The Moonbased, on Monday night. I believe they go around 7 p.m., I think. So we'll be over there on his, and I'll be shitting up his show for him as much as possible. Yeah, should be a good time. So thank you guys for being here, and we will see you a little bit later on. Peace out, guys.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Night, guys. That's awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for filling in tonight. And I'll see you guys back on comms after I get my pants back on.
Absolutely. See you in Discord.
Yep.